Now it's time for your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. State law reduces marijuana penalties from the BrownDailyHerald.com. A law decriminalizing marijuana in Rhode Island went into effect yesterday. Under the new law, individuals caught in possession of less than 1 ounce of marijuana will face a civil fine of $150 instead of the criminal charges possible under the previous laws. If an individual is caught with the drug 3 times in 18 months, the original penalty of $500 and up to a year in prison still applies. 50% of revenue collected from the fines will help fund drug treatment and education programs. House panel will hear marijuana bill. This from the statesmanjournal.com. 40 years after the possession of small amounts was decriminalized, Oregon lawmakers will consider a bill to regulate the production, processing, and sale of marijuana. House Bill 3371, which will be heard by the House Judiciary Committee this afternoon, isn't likely to advance this session, but it could become the framework for a ballot initiative for the general election in November 2014. Under the bill, the Oregon Health Authority would license producers, processors, and wholesale and retail sellers of the drug, and the Oregon Liquor Control Commission would have the authority to tax marijuana. Marijuana THC Driving Bill continues steady march to passage, this from Westward.com. As Westward has reported, legislation to set THC driving standards in Colorado have failed twice before. However, a new version that also tweaks alcohol DUI rules won unanimous approval during its first House committee hearing in late February. Representative Rhonda Fields, a co-sponsor of the latest measure, said, quote, "The reason this bill is different is because it has a permissible inference in it. The previous bill had a per se limit," end quote. To explain, the legislation from 2011 and 2012 would have established THC intoxication at 5 nanograms per milliliter of blood and made this standard per se, meaning that a test registering 5 nanograms or more would be seen as irrefutable proof of intoxication. But critics argued that because THC tends to linger in users for longer periods of time, it's next to impossible to determine actual impairment via a blood test, at least under currently available technology. This year, the 5 nanogram limit is still in place, but the per se language is gone, replaced by permissible inference, which would allow people who register at 5 nanograms or above to present other evidence to prove that they weren't actually impaired, rather than being considered guilty as a result of the test reading. Legal protections passed for medical marijuana caregivers, this from the Baltimore Sun. The General Assembly has passed a law that allows caregivers of patients who use medical marijuana to possess up to 1 ounce of pot without being convicted of a crime. Under the bill, caregivers as well as patients could still be charged with a crime for possessing the drug, but the legislation spells out how caregivers could prove themselves not guilty because they had the drug and paraphernalia to help a family member who takes it for medical reasons. The bill is among several laws being considered in Annapolis this session. The House, but not the Senate, has approved creating the state's first medical marijuana program. The Senate, but not the House, has approved a bill that makes possession of less than 10 grams of marijuana, roughly 1/3 of an ounce, a civil offense instead of a criminal one. Another bill that would completely decriminalize marijuana, then regulate and tax it like alcohol, received a committee hearing in the House, but has not yet been voted on. Florida medical marijuana bill stalled while Bongs ban advances. This from HuffingtonPost.com. 18 states and D.C. have passed medical marijuana legislation, but in Florida, the Kathy Jordan Medical Cannabis Act can't even get a hearing in the state Senate or House. The bill has stalled in Tallahassee, despite the fact that 7 out of 10 Floridians support legalizing medical marijuana. Meanwhile, a bill banning bongs was unanimously approved by a Senate committee. The Kathy Jordan Medical Cannabis Act is named for Kathy Jordan, who has been suffering from Lou Gehrig's disease since 1986. In February, the Manatee County Sheriff's Department staged an armed raid on the Jordans' home, seizing 23 marijuana plants, including 2 mature plants Kathy was using to treat her symptoms. Opponents like Representative Jimmy Petronas of Panama City think Kathy and other Floridians needing medical marijuana for medical reasons should move to a state where it's legal, reports the News Herald. Edwards told the News Herald she plans to file a compromised version of the same bill next year, limiting medical cannabis use to oil, pill, or topical form to further distance it from recreational use. This has been your 420 Radio News for Tuesday, April 2nd, 2013. I'm Russ Belville. We'll be back with more of the Russ Belville Show here on 420radio.org after these messages.